To anyone that says Star Trek was left-leaning, you should give them this quote and see how they react. Now, I can't show you the actual scene because of copyright, but there is a link into the pinned comment which will take you to Twitter, and you can see the whole scene there. Or I can just tell you and describe to you what is going on. Picard basically has a speech where he says, "You know, there are some words I know since I was a schoolboy. With the first link, the chain is forged. The first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably." Those words were uttered by Judge Aaron Sadi as wisdom and warning the first time any man's freedom is tread on, we're all damaged. And I just want to say how smart and how well the writers of the show managed to predict exactly how censorship played out. Because if you think about it, a couple of years ago, the internet was free. You could say pretty much whatever you wanted. And then people demanded censorship for safety. I remember online bullying was used, something that you don't hear now almost at all. But online bullying was the catalyst for this. And it was like, well, we need to protect people from hurting themselves because of things they see online. And the way to do this is if we just censor a couple of words. We censor a couple of slurs, and then the internet will be a safe place for kids. So that's what happened. You know, they started censoring words, and people started using euphemisms. People started using ways of getting around the censorship while still expressing themselves freely. But then the political correctness expanded, started encompassing jokes, started encompassing pranks. And right now there are YouTube videos that I used to watch 3 or 4 years ago that if you were to upload them today, they would get banned from the platform. I mean, if the terms of service of YouTube would genuinely be applied equally, episodes of South Park, especially from the first seasons, would definitely get struck down by the YouTube TOS for anti-Semitism, for slut shaming, for fat shaming, and so on and so forth. And it didn't stop there, did it? I mean, the censorship went all the way to the point where certain political opinions, things that are entirely okay with the law, like things that are legal, are now being suppressed from the platform. And it seems that it's just going to expand. So yeah, like Picard was right. With the first link, the chain is forged. And it does affect everyone, because I have seen left-wing individuals getting banned and getting the ban hammer over things that they would also champion in the past. Like, best example, J.K. Rowling, right? Like, she was a staunch advocate for censorship until it came for her. James Gunn, another example. Well, you know, like, usually, like, left-leaning people have a way of making a comeback, but they squeal just as loudly as everyone else when they're the ones getting banned because of the exact terms of service that they advocated for. What I want to say is that eventually the machine will come for them. I mean, it just keeps moving and moving and moving, and it does chain us all. It absolutely does that. Because at one point there will be an opinion that you think is too radical, a thought that you will just not be able to have, and that is going to be what's going to get you canceled. You might say a joke, or maybe you have said a joke already 9 years ago, and it's going to come for you. Now, what I found really interesting is the way Picard views this as a freedom, right? Like, it's not just that there is a law which allows people to have free speech. No, it's like a freedom that men have. And right now, especially in the United States, like, censorship is the norm. I mean, the government is asking for it. The government wants social media not only to censor people, but to also collaborate with other social media websites. And when one person gets censored on one website, they should get censored on all websites, right? So now, like, the US government, which used to be called the land of the free, is directing this censorship, is directly involved in contributing to it. And it's very sad. Now, if you compare this with Japan, in Japan recently I made a video about a guy who suggested that manga should be censored in order to please Google. Because Google is already having terms of service regarding what type of content can go there, and they have a firm stance against lewdness and content that is risque. Now, you do have manga, which is quite risque, and certain anime that is very lewd, and he suggested that Japanese creators self-censor in order to remove some of that nudity, in order to have their art a little bit more puritanical, resembling, I guess, like the comic book industry in the West. And the Japanese people, they reacted in a way that is very surprising. Like, they were incredibly offended about what this CEO had to say. It's very similar to how people in the West would react if someone would say something racist. So they tried to, I suppose, like, cancel culture the guy for what he said. And the CEO, like, did something that you'd never see someone do in America, and that was to give himself a pay cut of 25%, I believe, in order to show how sorry he is and that he's genuinely trying to apologize, and took back what he said. Because the idea of censorship in Japan, at least like censoring art and whatnot to the point of catering to the West, is very offensive to the Japanese people. And that is why you can have free speech. And I'm aware that in Japan there's a lot of restrictions on free speech and there's stuff you can't say. But it doesn't seem that the Japanese people want to expand on censorship. It seems like they're happy with their limits and they don't want to expand it. Meanwhile, in the West, like there's constant expansion. You know, you need more safety. How do you get more safety? By having a world of mutes. By having a world where people are afraid. And this is something very fascinating that I heard about. I don't know whether or not it's true because these are anecdotal evidence, but I've heard it from 3 different people that in some places, especially in some corporations in the United States, people are starting to behave like people in Eastern Europe, which is a lot more colder and a lot less spoken. Meaning that they don't trust other people because they're afraid that everything you say can be recorded on a phone or can be misinterpreted, and then someone can try to ruin your entire life. And because of that, people become a little bit more gloomy, become a little bit more shut in, become a little bit more cold. This is a phenomenon you'll notice if you go in Germany. Like, you go to Western Germany and you see the elderly people and they're all happy and cheerful and very welcoming. And then when you go to East Germany, especially the elderly, they're a lot more colder. They're a lot more difficult to become friends with. I mean, once you become friends with them, they're still just as happy and outgoing as their Western counterparts. But you notice, like, the first reaction is just like people are more shut in. Why? Because they were afraid. They were afraid that if they say something, they could have their life ruined. And because of that, they just had less things to say. They were less spoken about things. They would just shut their mouth. And you start to notice this, that it's happening in the United States. It's the chain. It's the chain that is wrapped around people's necks now. And it's tyranny. It's really sad that this is happening. But I suppose, like, the writers of the old Star Trek knew what they were saying. And it's very sad that we're not going to get the same type of wisdom like the old Star Trek used to have. But yeah, I mean, this is the type of Star Trek that you're never going to get. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section, and I'll see you all there.